Hello. All right. So today, welcome to the stream. This is going to be the Women in Gaming and Esports Industry panel sponsored by Gen.G. Um, oh, sorry. Uh, hi, my name is Ashley. I go by Kimmy03. I'm going to be a fourth year student at UCSD, and I'm actually the partnerships lead for Summer Splash. But yeah, let's introduce the guests. They're gonna give their name, positions, and their favorite game.
Okay,
Um,
I guess I'll go first. Hi everyone, my name is Julia. I'm a marketing writer at Riot Games on 2XKO. Previously, I worked on League of Legends and Wild Rift. But my favorite game of all time is League. It definitely led me to a lot in my life, obviously, but I started playing in pre-season 4, which is more than 10 years ago. Crazy.
All right, I'll go next. My name is Rachel. I am an operations coordinator on Valorant. And my favorite game also is League because that was also where it started for me. And I also started, I think, almost 11 years ago now. So it's been a while.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eugenia. I'm the Associate Director of Operations for the Education team in North America for Gen.G. As much as I also love League of Legends and I'm a Season 1 player, I would have to say that my two favorite games are Maple Story and StarCraft.
and then is Shelby there? Okay, I think Shelby's having some connection errors, but we shall wait. It's okay, guys. My favorite game. I didn't say it, but my favorite game is also League of Legends. Pretty good game. But I don't know if I started playing like 11 years ago. I started playing in like season 5, I think.
Then it looks like Shelby's disconnected, but she's on our team at Gen.G for Education Partnerships, working directly out of the University of Kentucky. She's actually overseas right now on vacation, giving up her Saturday morning to be here with us today. But her favorite game, I believe, is Legend of Zelda. She's played the whole series multiple times, and specifically Breath of the Wild on Switch. She really grew up as a console gamer, and she's really, really learning a lot about esports and particularly NBA 2K since we're over at the University of Kentucky with our team.
Nice. Yeah. I hope Shelby can join us soon. I'm glad Eugenia has her back with that. Okay. So we're going to hop into the questions. So the first one is, so what got you started in your current field and what inspired you to continue on this path? Anyone can start. You can start if you feel passionate about it, or we can do round robin.
I'm the oldest, so maybe I'll go first so we can filter down the line. But I got started because when I was in college, collegiate esports was just a hobby. It was something that we were doing for fun. We were building events because we really wanted to play games with our friends and to compete. And it felt really good. It was a way that I was able to make money while I was going to school and a way to make friends because I was actually a second semester start. So whereas, freshman year, September, you're on campus and meeting all of these people, I had to come in January and find my own space. And the BUPC Gaming Club was really some place that really allowed me to find friends very, very quickly. And I loved that experience. So by the time I got to senior year, I knew that I wanted to do it for other people. I wanted to create infrastructure so that other people can feel this magic and to build friendships. And that's really why I decided to make it my life's work.
Yeah, similarly, for me, games were always my favorite hobby. I grew up playing games, obviously, but I think I really started on this path when I went to college and I chose to study English because it was my favorite academic subject. I didn't really think that I really knew that I wanted to work in games, but I didn't know what I could be or like where I would fit in. So in college, I did a lot of work with, like Eugenia, collegiate esports and gaming organizations at UC Berkeley. So I got a lot of relevant experience doing marketing for student events and programs, and I met a lot of like-minded people in terms of supporting marginalized genders in games. So it was like a matter of finding my place, really. Like I did a lot of marketing, social media, writing in college, but I didn't think that I could be a writer. So I kind of ended up building the relevant experience by chance with my degree and what I was doing through student event management. Um, but yeah, I ended up interning at a couple different esports or at Gen.G actually, as well as Jam City, which is a game development company in Southern California. And then when the job at Riot popped up, I kind of had the perfect mix of the writing background and games experience, and that's kind of how I ended up here.
All right. So I guess for me, I went into college and actually finished college with a double major in biology and statistics. I thought I was going to get a PhD in microbiology and study disease research. I was really interested in like curing AIDS. That was like kind of my goal going into college. But then I got super involved in my gaming club because video games also was like a huge hobby for me. Um, and I decided, okay, actually, that sounds like a lot of school to get your PhD, and that sounds scary. So I'm gonna pivot and try and work in the game industry instead. So I did a number of internships, and luckily had a lot of like great mentors that helped me break into the space. And yeah, now I'm here.
Oh,
And
yeah,
if you guys don't mind me answering on Shelby's behalf as well, she, I think, has a really cool circular story where she was a University of Kentucky undergrad student, and then she went on to go work at Anime Expo. She's always loved Japanese culture and Japanese games and communities. And so esports was not really on her radar. But when she saw the role at Gen.G regarding the University of Kentucky and our partnership there, she thought it would be a really great moment to be able to go back and support her previous community. And so she made the transition from a non esports related job into esports. And I think that's very different from what the three of us did, which is to kind of enter the space directly after college.
yeah, no, it's really interesting how through collegiate orgs, through collegiate esports, we get into the industry, but also like in Shelby's case, you can just kind of stumble upon it if there's an opportunity. So the second question is gonna be, what was one of the most memorable projects you've worked on?
Is this projects in like undergrad or like
Yeah, the
since?
question's a little vague. Let's just say, like, in your time working in esports or gaming, are there any like projects that you personally like have worked on that like you felt like had the biggest impact or like was the most memorable?
Okay. I guess for me, there's like two two projects that come to mind. The first one's actually kind of boring, but I wrote a some code when I was working at TikTok. I worked at TikTok doing HR, like right after college, and we had to go through like these giant spreadsheets because we were hiring like so many people every single week, and we had to like verify all of their employment data, which is just a lot of data. And coming from like a stats background, I was actually able to like apply knowledge that I like learned in my degree to write this code in R, which is like a statistical software that's really great for like large data sets, to help automate that process, which was actually like very impactful for my team, but not super like flashy or exciting. Um, but it was so great being able to actually use my degree. And then I feel like the other one, well, one is like something that I'm working on now that is not quite done yet, but I get to work on swag for the Valorant team at Riot, which is like really, really fun. You get to be super creative, and we always come up with like these crazy ideas that eventually get narrowed down into something more attainable. But it's always really great working on that and getting to see everybody feel like super appreciated and rewarded when we give out the swag.
Wait, that's so cool. I think you writing that line of code, like I think that's awesome. Like I actually think that's like amazing. I think that's the best feeling ever. But sorry, I just wanted to comment in on that. That's not boring in my opinion. That's super cool. Yeah, and then Julia and Eugenia.
Yeah. So my most memorable project when I was in collegiate was actually Cal Marginalized Genders in Gaming. So UC Berkeley has a student club for women and other marginalized gender identities in games. And I joined as an officer in our first year from, I believe, 2017 to 2021. 2018 maybe. But yeah, helping to start up that org and get it off the ground meant so much to me. I definitely met so many peers and like mentors who are still in my life who are similarly like invested in supporting other women in games. So that was really memorable and I think impacted my life a lot. But the second one from my work life is probably Heartsteel on League of Legends. This past Worlds for League of Legends launched a boy band using League of Legends champions basically, and I helped kind of I helped build out their voice on social media and write a lot of things that you saw from them, whether that was like a Spotify bio or their social media posts or fun facts about them in skin videos. So that was really exciting. I had a ton of fun doing that.
And for myself, well over 5 years ago, I founded the Coursera Student Ambassador and Internship Program, which is a way for people to get some leadership experience while they were in college and to get some personal projects that they could put on their resume. And now that that program is well over 5 years old, we have those individuals entering the space and working in the industry. And it feels really cool to know that we created something that I would have wanted to participate in, that people are still participating in and finding very valuable. So I think it's both the most memorable thing that I got to work on because it was the first thing I ever created, and then very rewarding because I get to see the fruits of my labor sort of coming to fruition today.
I just want to jump in and mention that I came through the Corsair ambassador program. I was an intern first and then went on to be an ambassador. So really are entering the workforce.
Oh, hi, hello, welcome back, Shelby. I think your mic is not working yet. So sad. We can give it a second though. All right.
It looks like there is a server mute for Shelby in the broadcast.
Oh no. All right, I guess we're still on standby for Shelby. But yeah, no, it's very interesting to hear about like all your guys' different projects. I do think like Eugenia making those like pipelines of like going from intern into the industry is super cool. And then Julia's the Cal Marginalized Genders, amazing club doing amazing things. And I think the line of code is actually so cool. I think that's amazing. That might be my favorite, but that just might be me. Okay.
Agreed. I know nothing about code.
Okay. I've done R, but like I don't get it, but it's okay.
It was, yeah. I was a girl in STEM once. That's my like one thing I can point to.
She is STEM girly. That's right. I'm a business major, so it is what it is. All right. I think. Do you guys want to wait for Shelby or continue on to the next question?
I think we can just keep going. Sorry about that.
All right. Yeah. No worries. No worries. Okay. So the next question is, what has been the most rewarding part of being in the industry?
For me, just to say again, people like Rachel who come up as students and then now are working professionals, to be peers, to be sitting on a panel together as equals, I think feels so very rewarding.
Yeah, I totally feel the same way. Like I think with Cal genders in gaming existing for I think like 6 years now, there's just more and more of us who are getting into the games industry. There's like 4 or 5 of us who work at Riot now, and just seeing people come up from that community and like really make a difference in games, just really fulfilling the mission that we set out to do is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to be like a parrot to everyone else, but it is like, because you look up to people. Like, you know, Eugenia was like a huge role model to me among like others. And you're like, wow, I want to be them one day. And now it's like insane realizing that you're the person that people look up to and go like, I want to be you one day. And then really helping like build those people up so that they one day have that potential to be in the same position that you are is really amazing.
Hey, you guys are all doing amazing things. I'm one of those people. I think you guys are all amazing. You guys are my role models. I wish I was in your positions, but you guys are doing amazing jobs, and it's really cool to hear that like you guys believe in giving back to the community, and like basically like you are in this like where like a lot of us like college students were and stuff like that. Um, so we're gonna transition more to be more focused on your experience as a woman in the industry and talking more about that. So like, what is your experience as a woman, like, in esports and gaming, and what were some of the challenges you faced that were based on your like either your gender or your sex or your sexuality? Like, what were kind of struggles that you had there?
Yeah, I think in terms of experiences based on my gender, like I feel like my experience in collegiate was actually pretty rough. Like I think there were a lot of instances of other students not taking me seriously or really wondering like or thinking like for example like I didn't even play the game that I was running a club for or like was bad for some reason when I might be better than them or things like that. And it was like kind of a consistent undermining, I guess, which it was just hard to fight back against, I think. I think in collegiate it was difficult because there was often a lot of lack of understanding of like what the problem was or like why people couldn't say certain things. And I think it was really difficult in that environment sometimes because you know as a student you kind of just had to stand up for yourself. It was kind of like a wild west. There wasn't really any authority to go to or like um, enforcement of like specific rules or community values really. So I think my experience actually got a lot better once I got into the industry itself. Like I think once you're in an environment with more structure, but also where people agree on like supporting marginalized genders and marginalized identities entering the games industry, it gets a lot easier. So that was kind of my experience. Um, but overall, I think like a lot of women in the collegiate space like turn out to be quite exceptional because you have to work so hard to get past that type of like prejudice, I suppose. So I think in the end, it did make me a lot stronger, even though I wish for other people not to have experienced that.
Yeah, I kind of agree with like Julia in collegiate, like it was kind of rough at times. I was very fortunate to land a lot of like internships at very like big name companies. Like I interned at Epic Games, I interned at Corsair, I interned at TikTok. Um so like there were other students that I think were definitely like interested in positions that I ended up getting. And like I have literally been told in college that they were like, "Oh, well you only got that position cuz you are a girl." And it's definitely a feels bad because it's like, "Okay, well, like I think I deserved it, but like all right, I guess if you feel that way." Um but definitely like since being in the industry and like especially being at Riot because I feel like Riot is a little notorious for having um like a little bit of a difficult interview process. Like it wasn't honestly probably until I hit Riot that people were kind of like, "Oh, okay, maybe you actually earned this."
I feel super blessed that my collegiate experience, my career in esports, I think didn't mirror that same path. I feel very lucky in that a lot of people really advocated for me to get opportunity after opportunity. I don't think I would have been able to do a lot of the things that I have been able to do or the jobs that I've gotten not because they were my own achievements, but because people believed in me. My experience was actually quite positive. I've had a lot of people advocate for me, sponsor me, and promote me into different places that I think um, I, I don't think I would have gotten otherwise. But the one challenge that I think comes over time and time again that people rarely talk about is actually ageism. This belief that both young women and men in esports don't understand how business works or how the industry can be shaped or molded by youth experiences, or that the college experience you're building is valuable work experience. I think ageism is almost more of a prevalent problem in my career path than my gender. And those are some of the things that we want to help solve for at Gen.G. That's why we believe project-based learning is so important. It's because we want you guys to have paid opportunities on your portfolio so that you can enter the workforce with confidence, so that you don't, like me, feel like you have to get an MBA just to be able to sit at a board table. We want to make sure that you're able to lift yourself up into opportunity as early and as often as possible, and to have a group of people who are there advocating for you, alongside you, growing with you.
Yeah, no, that's like it's really interesting, like how there is like ageism within esports, and then also like I'm so sorry, like Rachel, you had to go through that experience. I can definitely like relate of the idea of like, oh, you just got it because you're a woman, or like even if like, you just got it because you're Asian. It's like it's just a completely like invalidating feeling, and like completely disregards anything that you've achieved, which is just an awful feeling. But I'm glad at unlike Riot or like in professional settings, it's less apparent. But it is interesting that you said like you hear it a lot more in college than anywhere else. Anyways, so who are your biggest female role models while trying to enter the industry, or any role models that you have right now?
I guess I'll go first. I mean, for me, I don't even remember when I met Eugenia. I feel like it might have been like a PAX East or something, or I just like vaguely knew of the Corsair program, but she was definitely like a huge role model for me. And I remember like even seeing like the Corsair internships. And at that point, like I had already landed my internship at Epic Games, but I was looking at it and I was like, dang, like I wish, well, not that I like wish I didn't land an internship, but I was like, oh, like I really need to apply for this next year because the program was just so like great. I was a part of it, like our club was a part of it, and it was like someone who I like really wanted to get to know. And also, I think I have to shout out Sandra, who was, I think she was our club director. She kind of did everything, but wasn't technically president. She went on after college to work at like Team Liquid, Nexon, Clutch. She's worked at a number of esports orgs, but she was the one who actually told me like, "Oh, did you know you could work in esports or gaming?" And I was like, "Well, do you have to be good? Because I am not good." And she was like, "No." And then she got the position. And I was like, "Oh, I can do this." And then I would say now, especially being on Valorant, the head of our studio is Anna Donlin, and she is superwoman. She is amazing. She is such an inspiration. On top of that, at least my little team is all women, and we have a number of women in leadership on Valorant, and they're just all so inspiring. And in the nature of my position, I get to work very, very closely with leadership. So it's really awesome to get to be able to interface so directly with all of these just like kick-ass women who are absolutely killing it in their careers and in life.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think Eugenia mentioned this earlier, actually, but I feel like a really big plus side of being a woman in gaming and doing a lot to support other marginalized people is that you meet a lot of like-minded people who have that same value and that same goal. And when I was in college and doing a lot of collegiate work with marginalized gender communities, women who were already in the industry would see that and be like, "Oh, like we like the work you're doing. We think you would be great for this opportunity," and like people would reach out to me and really actively advocate for me, and that's something like I can never pay, and that's something I'm so grateful for. But I definitely think that was a direct result of me doing all this stuff for women in gaming. um, but that's a side note. I think for the people who I look up to, one of my answers is also Eugenia. When I was in Cal Magic Gems Gaming, Eugenia was introduced to me as my first industry mentor as part of a mentorship program that matched students with industry professionals. And Eugenia fixed everything about my resume and about how I applied to jobs and things like that. And 6 years later, like she's still connecting me to opportunities to this day, and that's something that I'm really grateful for. But outside of that, I also really look up to her name is Sherry Lynn, but she was a collegiate leader like 2 years ahead of me in school. She taught me everything about being a leader in that position and really reaching out and building my skills in terms of just running an organization. And also, Megan Ju and Iris Zhang are two women who were at Riot at the time when I was in college. And we met through CMGG, just like doing events or, you know, coordinating with Riot for things. And they really went out of their way to give me advice and connect me to people who could help me get where I wanted to be. And that's something I really appreciate about being women in games in general. Like, I think a lot of the women in the industry are looking to give back, like we mentioned. And yeah, they're just really generous with their time and advice.
Well, I'm so glad that I was able to make a lot of mistakes and tell you guys how to not do those things. So it was my pleasure. Um, I think for me, I feel really lucky because women have been in esports since the start of esports. So I grew up watching StarCraft and Warcraft 3 broadcasts that were run by Kim Fawn, who is actually now lead over at RTS, who does the Evo conventions out of Vegas. I am really so appreciative to Tori Pugliese, who was the director of marketing for North America over at Steel Series, who also supported my gaming club and spent so many hours on, at the time, Skype with me, listening to me cry about all of the issues we were having at our gaming club and not understanding how to make the club, operate like a business. And then, of course, people like Eunice Chen, who's still very active on the esports side, but she was at the time over at Cloud9, who I got to sort of mirror in the experiences that I had and to follow along on her career growth and journey and to sort of follow suit and follow in her steps a few years afterwards. It's been, I feel really lucky that so many women created the paths for themselves and that I just had to sort of tiptoe the same journey that they did. Those are probably the three most impactful people for me.
And then Shelby typed in the chat that it was mentioned that she didn't have a direct pipeline into esports, so she didn't have a direct role model within the industry, but her mom inspired her to pursue the career and then go down this path, which is really cute. So cute. But yeah, no, it is. I thought Eugenia brought up a very interesting point where maybe it was Julia, but where it is really nice that being a woman and in the industry, I feel like we all share very similar experiences, and I've personally only met people who are willing to help and support each other, which I really appreciate, and I hope that's something that we continue. So that is really nice. Um, yeah, love female role models. I personally have a lot. I think most people on this panel. Um, Actually, I just met Rachel, but honestly, she's a role model in my eyes too. But Eugenia, Julia, Shelby, they're all super amazing women that I aspire to be like when I grow up, or I guess when I graduated in a year. But anyways, um, so next question is, why do you believe the industry has been harder for women to enter into? And do you think there are any systemic issues that could be contributing to this hardship or this barrier that women have to go over if it does exist?
I can go first. I think so much of being a woman is sort of being scared of crafting spaces for yourself where you can enter and feel comfortable, not just in esports or in gaming, but in pretty much every field. I've talked to my peers who are now in places like Formula One. They say the same thing. I feel like I don't have space. Or my friends on professional sports teams who work on sales, and they say it's really everyone was so welcoming. They just had to be willing to apply and to step up and in. I think the industry is harder for women to break into because we ourselves believe that it's difficult. So the more we believe that we can do it, that we are capable of doing it and can do it just as well, if not better than men even, I think it'll continue to be difficult. So I'd encourage everyone to flip their mindset and to think more positively about the personal impact that they can have in the spaces that they want to enter, whether it be esports or not.
That was just such a good answer. Like, I don't know how to, how to contribute more. But I also think, like, kind of on the note of, like, I guess knowing that we can build spaces for ourselves, is that I think for the longest time, culturally, video games are kind of thought of as a boys thing, or they used to be when we were kids, you know, like COD, for example. It was more like, I feel like, marketed and socially thought to be like for like boys growing up, and girls weren't necessarily like encouraged to play video games as much versus like boys, at least culturally. um so sometimes it feels like, I think that can perpetuate a little bit into like now, where we feel like, oh, video games are still for boys, therefore like we can't be here, we shouldn't be here, we shouldn't be creating these spaces for ourselves. And I think it's going to take like a little bit of time for people to unlearn that, especially like when we were growing up at this age where uh, that was kind of what the culture was like. But I think it's so different now, that I'm hoping that girls growing up now and in the future realize that gaming is 100% for them as well, and feel very comfortable to make space.
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I do think my experience in collegiate was somewhat difficult, and I think a lot of women that I know, at least around my age in collegiate, had a similar experience where people would doubt your abilities or question your interest in games for some reason. Or like one thing I noticed a lot actually was that other students didn't really think that um, or didn't really agree that like being a woman in games was like a marginalized position, I suppose. Like when we were starting CMGG, I would hear a lot from other students like, "Oh, like why do you need that?" Or like, "What? Why would you need that space?" Basically. So I did feel like that sort of attitude was difficult to handle and like kind of hard sometimes. Um, but I think, like I mentioned earlier, um, in terms of how it affected me, or like how it affected a lot of like female leaders that I know in the collegiate space, was that all the girls who were in the leadership positions were very determined to succeed, like very hardworking, like very committed. Because I think in order to like push past all that and be like, okay, like even though people are saying these kind of bad things to me, or like I don't necessarily feel welcome, like I will keep going and I will work really hard to show that I should be here. And I think that kind of experience or like really made for some really exceptional like hardworking people. And I think I really admire like all the peers at my level who I saw like push past that. So I think that kind of is the positive side to those challenges.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think like it kind of goes back to what we were saying. We're like, because a lot of women have like the very like same like prejudice, the same like systematic like sexism. Like that's why we feel so strongly like with supporting each other, and it's a really great environment to be in. But I mean, like yeah, for me personally, growing up, like I like Pokemon. Pokemon was in like the boys section at like Target, so I just had to go with my brother. But it's like, why does it have to be just a boy thing? It's literally Pikachu. So it's like very, very interesting how like toys are marketed and how video games are marketed as kids and how it has like kind of grown into what it is. But it's really cool to know that women like yourself are breaking those stereotypes.
Yeah,
All
and I
right.
think it's important to note that not everyone has the same experience. Like, I feel like my answer was a bit more negative than Eugenia's, just because I think, we've had different experiences. So it's not like every woman in games has the same universal problem. I think it just happens differently for everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. That definitely is varies from person to person, but yeah. Um, so what are your opinions on female esports teams or female leagues? And then, are there any challenges in your are there any challenges in your opinion on implementing these teams?
Yeah. So I really love marginalized gender leagues in esports. I think they're an amazing step. For me personally, like, and I think in collegiate, we saw this too, where like before Cal marginalized genders in gaming existed, right? There weren't really that many girls in the gaming community in Berkeley, but once we started, CMGG just became huge, and I think like we heard from a ton of people. It was like, oh, I never would have thought to join a gaming club at Berkeley, but then I saw that this one existed, and I thought, oh, like that sounds like a space for me. And now I have a lot of friends who are still in school who are competing at a collegiate level in like marginalized gender league for Val or for League, which are starting to pop up. And I hear the same thing from them. It's like, oh, I never would have thought to compete, but then I saw this and I was like, oh, like I'll give it a try. So I think it's really amazing to have a dedicated space where marginalized gender players are encouraged to compete and supported. Just because I think, like, as you mentioned earlier, like historically, like competitive gaming has been for boys, like stereotypically, and I think like having a space where people are explicitly encouraged to step in and like get out of their comfort zone is really great for that next step. I think the ultimate goal is like, it'd be amazing to have like gender diversity in general esports leagues, and have like an equal amount of men and women or non-binary representatives like on stage. But I think marginalized gender leagues are a great step towards that and getting more people of marginalized identities in in competitive environments.
Yeah, I agree with basically everything that Julia said, but I also think like further on that note, just seeing like game changers, for example, in League and Valorant, I feel like that helps really encourage the younger generation to start building similar things out as well because they feel more seen and represented, kind of like Julia was mentioning. Like, for example, I've seen like, I think the Aurora series is a mostly student run, semi student run organization that is making now like marginalized gender and women leagues, which is so cool to see that now, like, if it changes at the top, this helps to spread it down through like the collegiate level and maybe even lower to like high school. So that is really great to see and eventually can help build towards really having more of that gender diversity in just the general esports leagues.
I think if the last year is indicative of anything at the like sports esports level, it's that women's sports are in a renaissance era. You have stories of people like Caitlin Clark creating major waves and building spaces for themselves. You have the Olympic viewership numbers for the men's versus women's sports in places like gymnastics, where there is no real parity in those numbers. And then you have the formation of new clubs at the soccer level for women's sports. You have a whole new league, the PWHL for hockey. And even in esports, I think you're starting to see more conversations around what this could look like and doing it correctly. So I think the biggest hurdle that we will have to face is how do we convince people, both viewers and sponsors, that women's athletic stories are as interesting and compelling, if not more so, than the traditional storylines that we've been getting? How do we add elements and layers of peoplehood into their crafting of broadcast announcements, into their journey to pro, to make it compelling for people to enter? It will require some initial commercial dollars and people to believe in the league before I think viewers follow, and then viewers will follow the storylines. So for us to attack it in a circular manner, for us to say we need to both encourage the story crafting because we need viewers, for us to say we need the viewers because we need the sponsors, and for us to also say we need some sponsors to take a leap of faith and to enter the spaces so we can create them together, will require a large emotional push from everyone from all angles. And that is probably where the challenge lays, is you don't have many stakeholders currently putting tent poles into the ground and saying that they'll stand behind it. And it really just takes one person to believe in the value of something in order for it to spread. You know, UT Austin was the first marginalized gender club. UC Berkeley followed soon after. And now we have over 15 that I know of, probably 25 this fall semester, much off of the works of people like Rachel, who are leading gaming clubs while they were in college, like Julia, who crafted specifically marginalized gender communities. Then, of course, the work being done by the gamers community and LGBT communities all around the US. We have to recognize that the more we do the legwork ourselves and to say that we stand behind it, the more everyone else will also follow suit. And it certainly is a large leap of faith that we have to take together.
Yeah, I don't even know how to respond to that. That was such a good response by all of you guys. But yeah, I actually have like lost for words. Yeah, okay, we're gonna just go to the next question, but sorry. That was very inspirational, and I think what you said is very true. Okay, so the next question is gonna be what are your goals or dreams for women in esports in the future, and how do you think the industry could adjust to reach these goals?
I mean, I'll start with a hot take. I think for me, 10 years from now, I would love to not have these types of panels that are called, you know, women in esports or things of that nature. And the way that we would do that is by recognizing that parity, equity, and equality are not the same things, and that all three are needed and necessary in the esports industry, but all require very different tactics. So I think that's my dream. 10 years from now, we don't have these panels.
Yeah, I totally agree. Actually, I think something I touched on earlier is like, oh, like it'd be great if we had like an equal number of like marginalized gender identities and men in general esports leagues. Like I think the same thing kind of applies. Like when it's normalized for women and non-binary people to be in games, then you wouldn't have panels like this, right? Because like, oh, like it's just a regular like insight to be a woman in games. Like it's not like crazy or like a marginalized identity anymore. And I think that would be really amazing. um, yeah, I think I would, I would love to see just if women were a normal part, like not that we're not a normal part of the industry now, but if it wasn't like, oh, like being a woman in games is like an exceptional thing, or like you have to work really hard to be a woman in games. It'd be great if that could just be normal. I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the not having any of these panels anymore. Um, Obviously, definitely still support, but but just in general. Um, but I also think that like my hope, however many years in the future, is that when somebody is like applying for a job or looking for internships or thinking about going into the space, it like does not cross their mind of like, do I belong here because I am a woman or I am a marginalized gender? And instead, like, what qualifications do I need for the job? And it's never once like a question of like their gender identity or their identity in any way being a factor in whether or not they think they can get something. And I think in the future it would be really great that it's just, do I have XYZ qualifications that this job lists as to, whether or not they feel that they can apply for it.
Yeah, I definitely think that kind of fear speaks to my personal experience as well. Like I think when I was just starting to get into like really seriously thinking like, oh, like I want to get a full-time job in games after college, like it was always a question for me like, oh, like is it worth it? Like I'm kind of scared. Like I think it'll be hard for me to exist in this space and like maybe it would be easier somewhere else. So I think like it would be amazing to not have other people have that fear. And I think, for me personally, it has panned out. Like it's like, oh, like this is worth it. This is what I love to do. So I think, being able to say that and just hopefully make the way easier for people in the future, that's definitely a dream. Um, And that being said, even though everyone said like, oh, it would be amazing to not have these panels anymore, I think they're still really valuable like right now. You know what I mean? Like I think when I was a student, for sure, like seeing other women, marginalized people in games talk about their experiences and like how they got there, like really, really inspired me, like made me feel like I can do that too. So not to say that this type of panel is bad, it's definitely not. Like I think we still need this type of conversation.
Yeah, no, I like totally agree with you guys. I typed like that was a very base take because I mean, like when I was growing up, I always saw like these like oh women in blank or like women in STEM. I actually thought it was like very isolating at first, and like that's the feeling I got. But then as like I grew up and understood like oh like it's like a little rough being a woman. I definitely agree with like Julia's point where like these panels like give you people to look up to. It's like oh this is like what like role models. This is like those who like kind of beat the system or like if there is a system. But like yeah, definitely always thought they were interesting and like Eugenia said like I hope in 10 years that's these types of panels don't exist. It's just like people in gaming, like kind of panel, like just a general industry. So, our this is going to be our last question for the panel. So, do you guys have any advice to any other women who want to pursue a career in esports or gaming, and like especially giving advice to those who might be afraid to even like pursue it?
Yeah. I think I can go first. I think for me, my main advice is like be really vocal about your values and like what you want. Like I think when I was like I mentioned, like I always had like some fear around entering games as a woman, but I think one of the things I was really worried about was like, oh, like if I always talk about like my experiences being women in games, or like if I always advocate for like marginalized gender gaming communities in collegiate, like are people gonna think like, oh, like she's only there because she's a girl, or like kind of this type of stuff that we talked about earlier. But I think like me like sticking to that and being really vocal about what's important to me and like prioritizing like advocating for people of marginalized gender in games like led me to meet a lot of people who shared that same value, who were really like willing to advocate for me and like really appreciated the work that I was doing. So I think, and even though I was unsure about it at the start, like I think being really open about what's important to me and like what I think will be good for the industry, like led me to meet so many like amazing, hardworking, like really talented like women in gaming who also wanted the same thing for me. So I think being open about like what you think is good for change in the industry is really great. I think uh, there's definitely many more positives to it than negatives. Um, yeah, that's my advice.
I guess I'll go next. One thing that I saw in the chat that Shelby mentioned is that a lot of the times, like, the loudest voices are male, whereas a lot of the times, like, the quieter, like, more behind the scenes work can often be done by, like, women. And I think that is one struggle. I feel like a lot of the times women really struggle to advocate for themselves, and a lot of the time, men's voices are just very loud. So it's very easy to be like, oh, maybe this person is like talking about all of his achievements. And then, you might think, oh, well, I'm not good enough because like, wow, listen to this guy like bragging about all this stuff he's done. And I think it's so easy I mean, for everyone, but especially women, to have imposter syndrome and to really sell yourself short and say that, oh, what you did isn't super impressive, or, that you don't deserve to be there because like, oh, that thing, like that just took me like a week to do. It wasn't really that big of a deal. But I think it's important to realize that you're actually doing stuff, and you're doing stuff that you should be proud of and can be proud of and other people will be proud of, and definitely like don't sell yourself short just because other voices might be louder than yours.
I think, there's a saying that behind every powerful man is a woman. I don't know if you guys have heard that before, but one of the most powerful women in esports that I know is Carol LaForge, and I had the pleasure of meeting her when I was in college. If you guys are StarCraft fans, you've heard of Day 9, you've heard of Tasteless. Kara is their mother, and she is truly mother. One of the pieces of advice she gave me and a bunch of my peers in a conference that we went to was to scare yourself a little every day. Yes, you may be afraid to step into these spaces. I know that I was 100% terrified. I'm still terrified. But you have to scare yourself a little every day. You have to be willing to stretch and to learn and to grow and to try new things. And I think that that's just good life advice in everything. I'm so pleased to hear that I was someone that Rachel and Julia could look up to in college, because I was terrified out of my pants about everything I was doing. The pressure to try to mirror the leaders that I was looking up to and to try to be a role model was incredibly difficult. But we have to scare ourselves a little, because you don't know who is watching you and trying to emulate you and to grow off of you. I also want to say that you sort of have to be willing to craft your own space and to be unique and to do the thing that feels right for you. Esports is still young enough and stretchy enough that new spaces are being built today. The spaces that you build don't have to look like those of others. And the same way that we are willing to open up our network and our time to you guys, both in doing these panels, and I'm so sure privately in our own times, you also have to be brave enough to ask for that time, right? It's not enough for you guys to hear what we're saying on the internet and to assume that all of this advice is suited for you, but to also recognize that you have the power to ask for the things that you need, and you deserve to ask for the things that you want. And of course, to respect if we say, no, we don't have the time, but in the event that we do, to come to the table with the questions, with the things that you're needing to be serviced with. But you have to also ask and to be brave enough. So if you're scared, you have to just be brave enough to ask. And I'm so sure that all of us, including Ashley, at some point there's going to be freshmen who look up to you and want to do exactly what you're doing over at TG. You have to, the viewers, have to be willing to step up and to ask for the things that you need.
So yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice, just being brave and having confidence. Like, I'm in this panel because I volunteered for it. I was like, oh, I could host a panel, and this is where I am now. But I definitely think just like putting yourself out there as like a college student, just reaching out to those people that you meet, connecting with them on LinkedIn, commenting them on Twitter, and all that ends up like working out. And if you believe in yourself and have the confidence, I think it definitely works out. And then also working on yourself. That's like my general advice as a college student, because I'm still in the struggle, but I try to keep that in mind a lot too. So like, when it's like, oh, we weren't that tight when I met them, I still message them just to see like if it'll work, and then just trying to show that I am down. But yeah, no, all very great pieces of advice. I think being a woman in gaming is, I wish it wasn't like titled like this, but unfortunately it is. But I think everyone here is doing such an amazing job within the industry, within the space, and proving that, well, not even like proving anything, just like you're just doing a great job. And I think that's amazing. And yeah. So I think that will conclude our our Summer Splash Women in Gaming panel presented by Gen.G. Um, so yeah, shout out Gen.G. Thank you for sponsoring and supporting this panel. We love Gen.G. So for all those collegiate club leaders out there, Gen.G's applications for their club support program has been open for like the past couple weeks. It actually closes in 2 days. So you can do the exclamation Gen.G for the application link, or you can go onto their socials to see the application. But like Gaucho Gaming works, and like I think their marginalized gender club at Santa Barbara works with Gen.G, and I've only heard very positive things. Gen.G's doing great things. Eugenia's doing amazing things. Shelby's doing great things. So I highly vouch for this program. I have a personal connection to them. They're really cool. But yeah, so does any of the panelists have any? I probably should have said this earlier, but any closing words or remarks or anything before we end?
Thanks for having us. It was great to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for hosting, and for Summer Splash for putting this on. And I hope Gen.G goes far in champs because I have them doing well in my pick'ems. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you again. And if anyone wants to follow, I think any of us on social media, I believe our handles are tagged across the Summer Splash social media channels. But I think a lot of us are often on these types of things giving advice, and we're happy to help however we can.
Yeah, well, with that, thank you guys for attending this panel. We really appreciate it, appreciate your time. But yay, all done.